Good afternoon and welcome to United TV. My name is Kemal Erkan. We are glad you are joining us today. Today, we are pleased to welcome Delaware State Auditor Lydia York. Auditor York began her term in January 2023 and made history as the first African American woman elected to an executive office in Delaware. A certified public accountant, attorney, she brings a decade of experience in accounting, finance, and law to the position. Her office is responsible for major statewide financial audits and for examining whether public agencies are using taxpayer dollars, accurately, efficiently, and transparently. Today, we will discuss her path into public service and the work of rebuilding the auditor's office, several major audits and transparency initiatives, and the areas of state government she believes deserve greater scrutiny. Lydia, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm well. I'm well indeed. Thank you.
So this is our third one.
Yes,
So and then it's the first one in person. So
I'm excited about
I'm
that.
so happy that you are here with us. So we want people to first get to know you. It's been now almost 4 years. And we want to talk about the different things that you were able to do, what you were expecting. All those are going to be part of our session today. But I want to start with your own story for those who may not know you today. That's still possible. So if you can give us a little bit background on who you are, so then those people
Okay.
would know you a little bit better.
Well, if you really want to know who I am, you probably should know that both of my parents were educators. And so that was the household that I grew up in. And specifically, they were in the public school
Hmm.
system. I went to public school from K through 12, 1 through 12 in the Pittsburgh public schools, and my kindergarten was actually in North Carolina. But I think it's my parents who were always doing something for someone else and modeling the kind of behavior that they would wanted their children. I have an older sister. They wanted their children to also emulate. And my sister was also an educator, elementary ed, and in her later years started teaching English to speakers of Spanish. So that was her service. I grew up and became an accountant, so I was the outlier in the family. But I could see that there was going to be an opportunity to do some public service, and I picked that up actually after graduate school, and was doing a lot of financing in affordable housing. Okay, working with the Section 42 tax credit and developers to build housing units. And I was working for Duquesne Light Company, the public utility in Pittsburgh, to make that happen. And that's actually how I got to Delaware, okay, because we had done so much work in a subsidiary. They wanted the subsidiary, which was based in Delaware, to have genuine Delaware roots for all kinds of corporate reasons. But I ended up staying here. And that's when I went to law school at Temple University, where one of the deans, one of the assistant deans, was a classmate of one of my older cousins. So that's how I got to. That's not how I got to Temple. That's why I went to Temple, as I knew there would be a friendly face there. And after law school, after completing a clerkship in New Jersey, in Middlesex Vicinage, which includes New Brunswick, I decided that I really did want to stay here in Delaware. And so I had to turn around and take the Delaware bar. And that's when I started running into it's like, well, do you want to be the parliamentarian of Newcastle County? I said, sure, why not? It's just rules, right? There's nothing political about the rules. But it was from there that it was kind of like, for sure, that was my path, that I would be a faithful party person, helping with the rules and helping us be better at expressing democracy, which is what the rules are all about. And of course, we know that sometime in actually 2021, storm clouds rose on this particular office, and the party at the time was very quietly trying to figure out what they were going to do about that, because that's really inconsistent with the Democratic brand, shall we say.
Hmm.
And they were looking for someone who could successfully challenge the incumbent as well as win in a general election. And as I tell people very often, someone passed my entire CV across to the then chair, Betsy Marin, and they were like, "Well, we don't need to look a whole lot further, do
Hmm.
we?" And so that's when I got the I was asked to run, and I gave it the serious thought that it deserved, but I decided that that was the right thing to do for me and as well as for the state.
So when you were making that decision from private sector to public, well, position like this, you give up a lot of on the financials. You can earn a
You
lot
you
more money, and you choose not to do it. So, and also like you are in front of everyone now, you are a public figure, so that brings a lot of security in your life, and that's a lot of decision making process. So I guess you didn't have any difficulty with that.
as I said, it did take me a couple weeks, frankly, to come with an affirmative response. But part of what helped that was that um, I did not have a family,
Hmm.
so I didn't have those kinds of responsibilities and obligations. And as I tell people, I am the youngest member of my generation in the cousins world, and so everybody else is fine. And I said, this is how I can, repay all the good things that have come to me because of our system of government. This is a way that I can repay all of that,
So
or a lot of it anyway.
that's a lot of not just the responsibility part, but when we give up, yes, money is not everything, but it's a really important tool, and you are in return you are not replacing that, so you are making sacrifices, and I do admire that. So especially with your dual background, being CPA and being a lawyer, so you have a lot of freedom in
That's it.
terms of
I said, so don't leave out the MBA part because I lean on
well,
that a lot
sure.
too.
Absolutely. I mean, you did it all. So, um, and that's really important. And hopefully, Delawareans are understanding that they have the most qualified people in these positions, like yourself. Now, in terms of your position, a lot of people they have different understandings of it. So, you are in charge of. Pretty much going through everything that state is spending.
Hmm.
But for the taxpayers, if you can explain your responsibility of your office, uh, that would be probably helpful for many people.
Okay. So the Delaware State Auditor, and I really do want to draw attention to each of those because while there are different offices across the country with very similar names, and we do all meet together periodically, but as it turns out, we have very different spheres of direct influence and responsibility. In the state of Delaware, we're responsible basically for overseeing all of the state's expenditure.
Hmm.
Okay. And that means functionally, the one thing that we're most responsible for is the annual comprehensive financial review.
Hmm.
It's basically the state's financial report. That's important not only to taxpayers, but it's also important to the debt holders of the state's bonds. They look to that report as well. There's an additional report that most people may only hear about because of the way it's structured, is that you'll really only hear about exceptions. And that's the single audit, which is the audit of all the federal funds
Hmm.
that come to the state and then go to um, subrecipients in that fashion. And that's where you'll hear the most about findings that are around. I would say people are more interested in those kinds of findings because we're auditing very specific targets then, and so we have very specific things to say when we don't find what we're looking for.
And your office is fully independent from the other government
We
branches.
are in fact independent. I'm independently elected. I am responsible only to the people of Delaware, and then that's really all that is. Other than the employees of the office are employees of the state, and we go through the budget process as would any other department
Hmm.
in the state. But I am separately elected and don't have to concern myself with that particular concern. So I think that's an indication that I am here to serve the people in terms of what's going on.
Hmm.
Or as a colleague once said, "Mm, we're the department of, hey, what you doing there? What you doing over there?" And that's one of the things that we can do. We also, so in addition to that, though, we are responsible for reporting on I would call it, unbusinesslike practices, um, and ensuring that things are occurring in as you know, with simplicity, accuracy, and economy. And that's a little harder, and that's why um, that's the more interesting part of what we do. In addition to all of that, there are right now roughly 39 or 40, I forget which one, other kinds of mandates that were imposed on the office by the General Assembly
Hmm.
for other kinds of work that they thought very specifically needed to be reported on in a specific way. And those include things like the audits on local funds, school construction, and those are the two largest or the most well-known reports that we issue outside of the financial review.
Sure. And what's the one most common misperception of the people like about your office? Like when
It's,
you your neighbors, when you tell them
and
what
they're
do
like,
they
oh,
expect?
what's going on? I think the most common misperception is that individuals have anything to concern themselves with us.
Hmm.
Um, we don't audit individuals. We're auditing departments. We're auditing other parts of government, occasionally other
Hmm.
governments. We are, school districts, occasional fire company here and there. Um, we're not our 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 reach doesn't include individuals.
Hmm.
So people are, oh, I need to get my taxes in. And I was like, I don't personally care about your
So
taxes.
you lost some neighbors after the position.
But that's their concern. I mean, if that's their concern, but
I was
the auditor's office is not concerned for that.
individuals. Yeah.
So we're about government and specifically state government and school districts.
Now, when you took the office in January 2023, you inherited an office that had some significant challenges. You were talking about it in the beginning. So when you walk into the door, what became the top priority for rebuilding and modernizing the office?
Well, in this particular instance, I thought the most important thing I could do for the staff that was still there
Hmm.
was to bring a sense of, I call it, the non-anxious presence, to
Hmm.
just be there and not cause them additional anxiety, to allow them to sort of freely go about the work that they were supposed to be
Hmm.
doing, because there was a system in place to do that. And so I thought the most important thing I could do is to let that go on while I was sort of understanding where they thought they fit in the whole thing.
Hmm.
Because there had been a couple of 3 years of turmoil, and it's just hard to do work. Um,
You had deadlines and all that
yeah,
stuff,
there's other things
right?
going on. There's audits going on. There was a pandemic going
Right.
on. There were other kinds of issues that needed to be attended,
Hmm.
just on a workforce basis. And I thought, I shouldn't say I bit the bullet, but it was like I said, you know what, I'm going to sit here and just let them be, and to watch and to learn, to listen.
Hmm.
Spent a lot of time just listening to everybody. And once I sort of finished with that, I said, okay, where do I have gaps in staffing? Because there were some gaps in staffing that opened up, especially at the senior level. And I think most people probably don't know that's the level that really needs to be in place for auditing,
Hmm.
because that's the review level. And so when I first got there, all the reviews were being done by two people, which means that everything just took longer than it should have.
True. True.
And so once I identified that as a priority, it was okay. I've got to fill those spots. then we have to fill in the spaces, the staff behind them
Hmm.
to fill all of our budgeted positions. So once I got that full, then I could really and to undertake the initiative to get more budget positions.
Hmm.
Because the state's budget has not gotten smaller since I came into
It
office.
got, yeah, it got bigger, right? So now, when I was looking at just the prep for this, and then also what I was following before with in the news and other things, uh, one interesting fact that I see is your office invested in making government financial information much easier for public to access. And quite frankly, I don't know if anyone really knows how easy to see certain things and how transparent these things are. And this was, I think, really important. Now, in terms of uh, making these public, um, why was this so important to you?
I think that one of the reasons we wanted to make all of this public is for the just the transparency of it
Hmm.
all. It started with uh, the tax, the ARPA, the account, the relief that came with COVID
Hmm.
under President Biden, and all the states got some, the counties got some, municipalities got
Hmm.
some, and we never really knew exactly who got what or how much necessarily.
Hmm.
And I thought for the state, we got a little over $800 million, and I thought that's a lot of money in this state. There's a lot of places where 800 million is probably some municipalities' budget, but here in Delaware, 800 million on top of what we're already getting is a lot. Is a lot, and I thought people did have some interest in what were they spending it on, and that's kind of where the ARPA tracker was born, is to sort of explain what that's been spent on, because I thought $800 million, we should have all noticed that.
True, true. Now, are you able to measure whether or not people are utilizing these tools
I,
that's
I, bel-
available?
we've been starting to get some. I might not know specifically exactly what they're looking at, but the traffic on the website is I would describe it as robust.
Okay, that's what I was asking. So that's good. This morning we do have an office in Turkey that works only for here. It's our outsourcing, but internal outsourcing office.
Hmm.
So I was talking to them. There's some non-government organization got in trouble, and they're behind, of course, with these. Uh, what I was telling you earlier, like the United States, we have certain things we do really well. The balance in politics, different terms and different timelines that each election has, elected officials has, and also like how good we are with the nonprofit organizations. I'm talking about like the Food Bank of Delaware or like the Brandywine SPCA, and the one that they had a lot of issues with the transparency and the reporting,
Hmm.
and they wanted me to do like a specific session for Turkey for that. So every once in a while I do have appearance on Turkish TV. So, but we use our channel as well in Turkish. So, and one of the things that I was able to just really quickly show them here, like this is like I'm the board member on SPCA. Here's the report of SPCA last year.
Hmm.
So this is audited by independent CPA, and all the others, metrics are met. But this is available to you. You don't need to pay. You don't need to go anywhere else. And then same thing with Food Bank of Delaware. Everything is right there. And then in fact, from Food Bank of Delaware, there's this accreditation with ABI where we got the highest scores
Mm.
for two locations. 932 out of 1,000 and 920 out of 1,000 for Milford and Newark locations. And CEO is proud of that. The board is proud of that, and that's part of the reason that people are trusting. Similar to what you are trying to build here in the government offices, branches, is the the whole trust and transparency. If we are not able to see how the money is being spent, who's spending, why they are spending, then of course there will be a huge trust problem. So I think that's really good that people are using it, and then I think these are going to be example for other countries. So
when people have the question, we should be able to answer it.
right.
Everybody might not answer it. A lot of people aren't going to necessarily be interested in the local funds at their local school district,
Hmm.
but there's going to be some folks who are. And aside from the fact that we have an obligation to talk about it, I think it ought to be easily available and ought to have some, there's going to be some comparisons. They can look
Hmm.
at other districts as well. It's just a matter of being able to answer at least that question, or to approach answering that
Hmm.
question, because we're at the service of the people. The
Right.
whole
Right.
my whole thing is that this is supposed to be making things better for people. And if they want some financial information, well, that's going to help make things better, I believe.
So, and I know we are in much better place today than we were 6 years ago or 10 years ago. So, and I think you are doing a really great job. And I don't have any horse in the race because you are not auditing the individuals, right? So we are not saying that because of that. Now, last year, your office received stronger subpoena authority.
Yes.
Um, for people, our audience watching, why was the change necessary?
Okay. It's so to be crystal clear here, we had always had the authority to ask for a subpoena, and this was typically going to be used in cases where, um, hopefully outside of government, we were still doing some work because of the state funds involved,
Hmm.
and we weren't getting the information that we thought that we need to do the work. There's certain basic information we just need to get. We need your bank statements. We need your accounts receivable ledger. We need, there's some things that we need, and if we don't get them, we have the ability to get a subpoena. Until we got this last law
Hmm.
changed, to have that subpoena served, we had to we had to go to court with a precope that was going to have to be drafted by our
Hmm.
deputy attorney general. A judge was going to have to sign it, and then it was going to have to go to the sheriff's office for them to serve. And while all of that might sound like, well, what was the problem with all of that? It's like, well, that process probably takes a couple weeks for information that we know exactly what we're asking for. We know we're entitled to ask for it.
Hmm.
It's just a matter of getting it served, and most typically where it's going to get served is at a bank. Okay, to get bank statements, and it's kind of like we're going through all of that to get a sheriff's deputy to show up at a bank.
Hmm.
Um, we thought there was a better way, and we learned that several other entities that also have subpoena power also had the power to serve. So we asked for the power to serve as well.
And that kind of, it sounds really bypassing because your position, your office already is,
We're already doing it.
yeah, I mean,
We're just skipping the part where we had to get a sheriff's deputy involved because they couldn't get involved without the courts getting involved. So
right.
that's kind of where the waterfall was running backwards at that point. But
Hmm.
we were like, we can hand over a piece of paper just like anybody else.
So, are you able to use this? Do you think that's already making it more efficient?
It's making it easy. Yeah, I think it is making us a little bit more
Mhm.
efficient. We were able to have that discussion about whether a subpoena is appropriate in a context of, well, will our DAG be available? Will there be a judge available? Will there be a sheriff's deputy available? We
Mhm.
don't have to sort of go through that delay. And to be, in an office as small as we are, delay in getting information means a delay in getting the work done, which means a delay in the next thing the person was going to be involved in. So part of us being more efficient and economical is literally just being more efficient and economical. And the people that we serve still have all their rights
Mhm.
around how they can contest the subpoena. And I don't think the fact that we didn't go through that other process diminishes their rights, because we're not trying to use it for the, it's not, we don't use it in a phishing mechanism. We actually have figured out we need something very specific or it's not being provided to us.
Right.
And so we need it and we think we need it. So we're going to go get a subpoena and take a closer look.
I mean, that, from what I understand, that makes a lot of sense. And, time is important. So you don't need to waste, especially when there's already so much that you guys have to go through. And now waiting to start and all that stuff, I think that's an efficient way to handle business. Now, one of the issues, which this doesn't make sense to me, when I'm looking at it from my Turkish hat, when I'm looking at it from my American hat, it makes a lot of sense. Dual employment.
Okay.
So this is like dual
Everyone has a side
citizenship.
hustle, you say.
Like, this is for the elected officials, right?
Yes.
So appointees. So if they have more than two positions
In government. Okay.
in government.
So let's talk about what this is really covering. So you're talking about an elected or an appointed official. So this is right away hiving off most of the people who work in state government, okay? Because most of the people who work in state government have either earned the position as a merit employee
Mhm,
or they've gotten the job as a non-merit employee, through an interview process.
mhm,
So we're just talking about elected and appointed officials. That does include judges, okay, and everybody who's elected to pretty much anything, okay. Because we want to make sure that they are not overlapping one of their jobs with their official capacity. And I'll just be
mhm,
honest, this affects the legislators in a way that it doesn't affect almost everybody else, because their sessions are, I mean, if the way I described it to one of the judges who was on the most recent list, we know where you are on the bench. We know
mhm,
where you are every day. And we know that you're not in a classroom because the classes are taught at night. So we know actually there's probably not going to be any overlap there. But for the legislators who meet during the day, who get a dispensation from their employer, their second
mhm,
employer in this case, the question is, did they successfully disengage from that employer to be, say, in a General Assembly meeting
mhm,
or a committee meeting or something of that nature? And one of the reasons we care about that, well, first of all, one is because this came about because at one point in history, it was happening that way, that they weren't clocking off the one job and sitting in the General Assembly. So they're getting paid twice functionally, and that tends to run up another pension, so they're benefiting twice into their pension system. And so the whole reason that we investigate dual employment is to make sure that one has stopped before the other
mhm,
one starts. And that's just going to give us the assurance that they're not shortchanging, the one employer in favor of sitting in legislative hall, you know, in that fashion. So that's what it's about. Now, the reality is we are doing some work that almost on the behalf of the Public Integrity Commission when it comes to that.
mhm,
And so they identify to us who that is we need to investigate further. And just like I said, to hit those cutoffs. So
mhm.
on the one hand, the legislators are more likely to have the problem, but on the other hand, they really only meet really functionally roughly half the year. In other committee meetings, we can easily figure that out, because there's a record of when they start and stop.
Like, just I can just for me to put it in perspective. So these have to be state positions, like two different
Hmm.
titles, I guess. Like,
It's
can you give me some
so
examples
very
of that?
Yeah,
Like,
sure. So I'll use the judges as an example. They sit on the bench all day
mhm.
and then they teach some kind of course in the evening on an
But
adjunct
if it's
basis.
private college, for example,
If it's a private college, they wouldn't be on the list.
okay, so if it's a state college, s-
So University of Delaware, Delaware State University,
hmm, hmm.
they get implicated in this.
Okay, so if they are working on both places, but then they are already paid for the daytime, and then if they are teaching at the daytime, then they may be getting paid twice,
That's the concern. Yes.
right?
This
But then if
this
they are teaching at nighttime, that's easy to separate.
Yeah. I mean,
I see.
that's easy to see. And
Do you have another example similar to this? other than
I'll use
the
I'll
judges? Like, we
use
don't want to piss them off.
this is hypothetical, I think, and you'll have a legislator that say, um, as we did when we on the report that we issued last time,
Hmm.
it was somebody who had a job. I believe it was at a school district, but they also had a job somewhere else in the state, just in another
Mm.
department in the state, and we had to just make sure that they were not what we call coterminous time, is that they weren't they weren't clocked in both places at the same time.
Hmm.
And so we're just trying to make sure that one stops before the other one starts.
And because if they had, like, I'm thinking if they have the private sector, but then now daytime, they're not there for 2 full days.
In
They
the
have
private
to
sector,
be,
yeah,
I mean, they have to explain why they're not there for, like, they need to use their, discretionary time and others. So otherwise, they wouldn't be able to do it. If
right,
the state official is doing this with, like, there's one full-time job and then another job on the private sector side.
right, and when that happens, they've worked that out with their private sector employees. There's a couple of my colleagues that sit in the General
Hmm.
Assembly. They work it out with the rest of their partnership or their employer, as the case may be, that during these times I cannot work client matters.
Hmm. I see.
So
Now,
that's all about, is to just make sure that they're not. I think the historic example, was, regretfully, law enforcement that were on the clock for the day
hmm,
who would go to legislative hall
and get
without
paid.
clocking out.
Hmm.
So that's where this, as I understand the legislative history of this particular rule, that's where that came
I
from.
see. Now, this actually dual employment audit helped prompt the House Bill 9 and House Bill 38.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, am I saying those right?
I'm not going to promise that those are the correct two bill numbers, but it did prompt a
It,
change.
the law changed. So
Yes.
can you explain how that change happened?
Um, it happened when members of the legislature, saw their colleagues
Hmm.
in the report and said, okay, we need to, and there was a specific finding around one of the second employers um, not being as forthcoming with information as we would have hoped.
Hmm.
And we've pretty much said that out loud. They said they weren't obligated to do that. So a law was passed to make it clear that they did have to respond.
Hmm.
And the other one was that I think we observed that there wasn't an efficient mechanism to actually identify elected or appointed officials who might also be employed elsewhere in the state. And so I believe they changed the form that all the legislators, at least, fill
Hmm.
out when they take office. Is that, I think they are asked explicitly, are you working anywhere else in the state? So that when we undertake this work, we actually understand who it is we need to look at specifically, because the Public Integrity Commissioners give us the list,
Hmm.
but we observed that it was really hard to figure out who all was on that list actually,
I see.
because they didn't have an easy way of saying, oh yeah, based on the information we have, here's who you need to look at. And so that's the little additional question that's on their form now.
I see. Now, from dual employment to, we are going to go to unemployment. So,
From dual employment to unemployment.
unemployment.
Okay.
So your office has also raised ongoing concerns about Delaware's unemployment insurance trust fund.
Hmm?
Um, for again, for our audience, why is having reliable financial records for that fund so important, not only for government but also for workers, employers, and taxpayers?
Okay. I'm going to start with the employers
Hmm.
here. Is that they're paying a tax each payroll cycle into the unemployment fund. But the rate that they're paying is assigned to them based
Hmm.
on their experience with unemployed workers and other factors that I'm sure go into the rate.
Right.
But the rate can change. It's based on the number of employees. How often have you had layoffs in the past? Have you had claims of it? So there's a little bit of, I'm not going to say underwriting going on,
Hmm.
but something like that is going on with each individual employer.
Yeah, some background that
Yeah,
helps to set that number for the employers.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And so they're building up money. I shouldn't say them building up money, but the money that's collected from them sort of helps determine everyone else's rates.
Hmm.
Okay. So when that money is collected on behalf of an individual employer,
Hmm.
and we kind of lose track of that, which is functionally what happened, we're going to have trouble with rate setting throughout the rest of the system
Hmm.
and with understanding whether or not an employer is being appropriately taxed or, in some cases, overtaxed. Okay, so this is around maintaining the fairness at that level while also making sure that there are funds available for every employee that may need it when the time
Right.
comes. So, in this case, in most years prior to the pandemic, the number the dollar value that was at stake was um, didn't get the same level of scrutiny. Just to be fair about
I
that,
see.
but with the money that functionally poured into unemployment, and as I tell people, if we go into the Wayback Machine to 2020, when we had the the PPP loans, the
Right.
emphasis there wasn't so much on are you qualified, but can you get paid? Or can you get the money? And so we had a combination of rates that should have been adjusted
Hmm.
with money that was pouring in on top of that. And suddenly, I shouldn't say suddenly, but the balances themselves became what we call material to the state.
I see.
And so that engendered additional procedures around the validity of the number. And it is in that sort of first pass um, that occurred under my administration where
Hmm.
it's like, oh, we might have a problem here because the balance has detail under it, meaning that the individual employer
Hmm.
balances summarizes in the total balance, and we couldn't quite, in all instances, identify the balances to the employers
I see.
in that balance, which then, like I said, because of those knock-on effects in terms of how everyone else is going to get taxed, it became very difficult. And plus, just as an audit matter, we didn't, how did you get that number? And does that number actually equal the subsidiary balances? It became a little bit of a mess. And we learned that the system that's responsible for all of this needed attention, attention, lots of loving, caring attention, which I believe it's getting. But because of this period of time, um, it's going to be really we've got to deal with that because your balance is accumulated over years. Um, somebody who's in business and has, say, two employees, and they've been consistently paying those two employees,
Hmm.
and at some point they're going to look up and say, "Is my rate appropriate for my experience?"
I see.
But we
Uh,
won't know because we don't know what your balance is.
right. That's why the having the technology and being able to have transparency is important. So
Yes. It's important to everybody. It's important to the state, it's important to the employers, and therefore I think it's important to taxpayers.
right. So it impacts everyone at the end of the day.
Hmm.
Now, finding problems is obviously one part of your job.
Yes.
Now, getting those problems fixed is another part of your job. So when agencies don't act on a major audit findings, what tools does your office have to make sure that those same issues don't repeat again and again in the future years?
Well, depending on what the finding was and the
Hmm.
periodicity with which we come back. So I'll take a finding from what we call the single audit because that's where we get the most findings because we're auditing to a very specific standard against another very specific standard. So it's
Hmm.
easy to fall out and into a find. It's easier to fall into a finding there. So when we find the exact same thing, you know, when we come back the following year, um, it elevates to a major finding just because you didn't fix it before.
Hmm.
Um, in terms of actual enforcement capacity, we really don't have it. We were really just trying to encourage the affected department to actually just address the finding itself. On the single audit, they give us what they call a corrective action plan, is that we're going to take these steps to avoid this finding in future.
Hmm.
But there is one department, unfortunately, and it's a function of how they're organized actually, is that sometimes the problem, say, occurs in this one division, and then the next year it's the same problem, but it's just in another division.
Hmm.
That's actually two different findings, even though it's the same underlying behavior.
So it may not be the same agency doing it, but it's the same issue may be repeated in a different agency. So
Yeah. So it's
they're
kind
not
of
taking.
a little bit like whack-a-mole, but in general, I know that the agencies do generally intend to fix their findings. Um, and we're sort of to the point now where we can discuss actively what happens when you get to the end. I know there's another state, like I said, the auditors do get together. There's another state that actually, you were mentioning some of my other, you know, trackers that I've got on the
Hmm.
website. That state has a findings tracker.
That's
Okay. And it's like, okay, we've had this finding in this year and this year and this year. And they get to a point where they say, okay, it's been 5 years. They haven't fixed it. So they're just on a whole nother list now. And
mhm.
so I don't think we've gotten to that point, but maybe next year I'll have a different view.
So one of speaking of the do's and the challenges, one of the big one, uh, pretty high profile audit was with the Diamond State Port Corporation. There were some concerns, especially in five areas: executive session practices, oversight of concession agreements, delayed collection remedies, outdated economic impact projections, and all those. And I know this was very public, um, and were uh, you were actually going through the audit for this. So um, your report raised questions about different contracts that they have, um, the oversight, and again with the executive sessions. Looking back at that audit, what concerned you the most from the Port of Wilmington?
From that report, I think the one that was of most concern was the economic impact, because that's generally speaking the most important thing
Hmm.
that we're undertaking with upgrades at the port, is to make it a better economic contributor to the economy in this state.
Hmm.
And I don't, I have my staff hears this constantly. We can't make good decisions with bad data. And so we wanted to make sure that they were using the best, most up to date um, economic impact, so that we could so the other folks can fairly evaluate um, the effort that's going into creating this economic impact, and whether this is a good use of the state's funds.
Hmm.
Um, I think to keep the port running, at minimum, we've got to dredge, and then they've got to get past now. And this is outside my purview, but they
Hmm.
now have to get past uh, these permitting issues to bring about this economic impact. And so,
So was it kind of like a premature projection? Like what?
well, I think I
Why did
don't
we
think
find ourselves in this position? I guess maybe.
so. I think when that initial projection came out, it was 2018,
Hmm.
long before COVID,
Hmm.
was being spawned somewhere. And I think the intention was that we were going to do this on a much more expeditious
Hmm.
basis. And so they were working with information that was relatively current. Had they started building, say, in early 2019 or even late 2019, and that would have sort of started the whole engine of what it was we were doing then.
Hmm.
But that's not what happened. We had issues first with the operator that were compounded most likely by COVID. And then we realized we had an operator that was not paying the concession fee as the agreement indicated.
Hmm.
And which led to delay. It sort of pushed all of that, along. And so we're standing in 2023 or 4 or even 5 looking at data that was published in 2018 based on information that they collected in 2017.
Hmm.
So now I think you're just so far out of sync with what's going on. And I know it wasn't necessarily intentional, but you do need to keep it up to date. And I don't think in the grand scheme, it's kind of like the second year we do an audit, we're more efficient because we just finished, right?
Right.
We know all the places where things can
Issues
go
that,
left. We
yeah.
know where to go look first. I think that something like that happens when you have an economic projection. It's easier to go back and fix those presumptions as you move along than it is to get 8 years out of sync and realize,
Hmm.
oh gosh, I mean, most of us would not trust an 8-year-old appraisal on our homes, would
No.
we? So it's the same. That's basically what we're talking about here.
And do you think it's going to be fixed? Are they already taking the right actions to fix them?
I think they're taking the correct actions to deal with the economic projections. Yes.
Okay. So another one is the school district issue with is it
Appoquinimink.
Appoquinimink?
It's
Okay.
a mouthful indeed.
So where is this one?
We call it Appoquinimink is just below the canal, includes mostly Middletown, Odessa town,
I see.
Townsend area, what we call the Mott. It's mostly that area, and it stretches fair distance down toward Smyrna, to be fair.
I
It's
see.
one of the largest school districts in the state right now,
Well,
and certainly one of the fastest growing.
4.9 million shortfall in 2025.
Yeah,
And
that
this is
was,
one of the things that you
I was
examine
an
again.
oopsie there.
So beyond that one district, what lessons should school boards across Delaware take away from that investigation?
I believe that most of the school districts, as APO did, have a mechanism to review the financial reports that are submitted to the Department of Education.
Hmm.
Okay. What we found was that they didn't stand up that particular committee, or the
Hmm.
committee was stood up and then didn't meet or didn't get the information. And so what turned out to be a relatively, well, innocent's not quite the right word, inadvertent error with regard to counting the number of pay periods in a particular month. There's twice a year. State employees are paid every other week, so that means we're being paid 26 times. Twice a year, there's going to be a month with 3 pay periods in it.
Hmm.
And I think they didn't quite pick up on that as one of the months because I think that year it was in May, and which means it affected everything that was going into their year end. I mean, it was sort of just a series of, again, a cascade of errors that were not intentional, leading to a result that was not giving decision makers the best information that they could get in terms of how it is they're making decisions. And regretfully, in the case of Appoquinimink, in May sometime, they determined that, okay, we don't have to bother with our tax rates behind the reassessments that were going on in Newcastle. But by the time they got to the end of June, they realized that they did.
Hmm.
And not only did they have to do it, they had to go to the max that was permitted. And I guess a lot of people were surprised to find that school districts could increase their tax rates without going to referendum. And I said, it's in this particular instance that they can. We just had the effect of having not had a reassessment for 40 years. So we kind of forgot about how the whole mechanism worked.
Sure.
So as we said, there was no malfeasance involved, but there were a lot of missed opportunities to do better.
So this is probably why we are also paying a little bit more on the school taxes, right? So That always bothers me because I don't have kids, right? So,
Well, I mean,
and I'm like,
yeah, but we all benefit by having good schools because it helps
right,
our property
right,
values,
right, right, it's true.
which so which in this case is going to help us pay more in
I'm gonna make
taxes.
4 kids in the next 4 years
But I think that
and send
again,
them to public school.
that's right, send them to public school, and I think that's why. I mean, I was genuinely the beneficiary of good public schools, and as good as they were, my mother for sure made sure I had, let's just say, supplemental education
Hmm.
because she had me reading at home. I read above grade. I was reading. My mother didn't actually even let me go to school until I knew how to read. So there's that. And that included kindergarten, just to be fair. So, but I think that it's important that we get this right because that's a significant part of the value of your home. It's a significant influence in society. It affects the economic circumstance under which we can draw
Hmm.
new businesses to the area. It's a factor that people think about when they're moving here or trying to establish their businesses here. So having good schools is the way I can help here is to make sure that we've got good financial foundation.
Right.
And if we get good financial foundation, maybe we can fix some of the other problems as well.
And public schools are, they're probably they need the they need these funds the most, as long as they're used in the right place. Every once in a while, like I get kind of like very critical of certain things. I live very close to Tower Hill
Hmm.
School, so that is private. So, and they have these sport complexes and those big spotlights, like the humongous spotlights,
Yeah,
they're on
at night.
at night. No one is there.
When no, like I said, when I drive by there on occasion,
Right. You see that
and it's like,
same.
what are they doing? I'm thinking maybe they're
No,
playing
there
at
is no
night.
one. I walk my dog there. No one is there. And I'm like, who's paying for this? And then I'm like, oh, this is
You are
public.
paying for
Well,
this.
that's public. I mean, that's the private school. I guess.
Yeah,
I hope I'm not
but
paying that.
but the tuition
But that
payers are
that
paying for it.
bothers me. Like, like how do we actually like how can they be this irresponsible? I don't want to put you on the spot for Tower Hill. This is just my opinion. But I'm like, it bothers me. Like, why would they be? Why? How can they actually not take care of that when they are claiming being one of the best schools in the country? So,
Hmm.
but schools
Let's
are
just say
schools.
that's the kind of thing that in a public school, taxpayers would want to know for sure. What's that going on there? You
So
know,
you can hire me as a side auditor. I won't charge anything. Like you don't have to pay me. So I'll just note
you'll
the
just go
things
take notes for us, and
right.
we have a
So
hotline. Don't forget, we have a hotline. You can always pass us a
right,
tip,
right.
and that does get reviewed on a very regular basis. And just a little plug about the hotline. We do take those complaints very seriously. If we see pattern in our complaints, we know that that's somewhere we have to act, or especially if we can. Very often, it's not something that's inside our jurisdiction or something that we can undertake, given our resource limitation. However, like I said, if we get, a bunch of complaints about the same thing or the same department in the same
Hmm.
thing, that sort of tells us where that original question I asked, hey, what you doing there?
Right.
That's where we end up.
So now your position is still elected position, so you have to go through every year. I mean, every 4 years, and it's going to be hopefully your second term.
Mm.
So you have the CPA background. Uh, Kind of like not an easy one. Most people find it a little bit boring, right? The law is too serious. Your job is too serious. So, what do you do for fun?
Or what do I do for fun?
Mm.
My current guilty pleasure is listening to AI slop on YouTube.
So do you just watch art?
No,
Art.
AI slop. And the science, in my mind, they're science fiction stories where
We can be in that
they,
category. You can
yeah,
just watch
we're not
us.
in that, we're not in that cat. This is live television.
Mm.
This is live YouTube, but it is AI slop because it's the same voice in every story,
So
and
that,
sometimes it's the same names in all the stories, and that's my guilty pleasure. Is I'll find one that's about an hour long
huh.
and do the dishes, and it's almost like books on tape, except the books are really bad.
Mm.
But
So what
it's
about
really a
like,
guilty
how
pleasure.
are you with social media?
I came to full maturity before social media did. Okay.
So,
So I know it's
so
important.
you have a Facebook account,
There's
but
a
nothing
Facebook.
else.
I have no. There's Facebook. I actually have a LinkedIn account.
Hmm. Oh, yeah, you
It's
do have
relatively
LinkedIn.
current. Yeah, I. But I don't. I think I have an Instagram account, which
I,
I tend to not post to. I tend to let other people tell me what's going on Instagram.
I
I
see.
have a Threads account, just so you know, and I had a
That's because you have the Instagram.
mm, yeah,
Yeah, that's
but mostly
automatically
because
you get that.
I still have the X account. I just don't go there as often because all the people I really
Oh, there,
liked on
yeah,
X
yeah.
went somewhere else.
X is like a crazy place.
It
So,
is, and so
and I'm in there. So
so I don't go
unfortunately,
I don't go there as often. Um, but I think, and I guess I shouldn't say Facebook offends me, but it does kind of sort of
you
because
don't want to post anything on
I do.
Facebook.
I mean, the campaign does,
Yeah, well,
but
yeah, yeah,
me
campaign related
personally,
stuff.
posting on Facebook, it's kind of like I'd really rather call you and find out what's going on rather than
But
read
you know,
about it.
the generations, the changes are happening so fast, and people adapting so quickly. And you know, like in the old days, you know, we just had Facebook. Life was easier, and now every social media outlet has its own category. So that I just read something yesterday. So based on this social media outlet you are using, it gives you your age range.
Hmm.
So like, and I was just trying to stay out of the over 60 side, but I had accounts on everyone. So trying to kind of balance it as much as possible. But I find social media kind of like related to your job in different ways because a lot going on there.
Hmm.
People are doing, some of them they do it under their name, some of them they do it with fake accounts. There's a group like there are like these bot accounts, like so you can actually like have an like kind of cyber attack on any individuals if you buy 300 people on X. There are people like that. There are groups like that. That's how they operate. The political parties are into it. The other different, you know, elected officials, different like brands, like when they want to
Hmm. Hmm.
destroy another brand, so they have their troll army, and then boom, like there's a lot of stuff going on. And I think that requires a lot of uh, transparency in a way, and then also there's a lot of regulation needed. I know it's not like the actual audit, but the
Hmm.
nature of what you are doing is also needed in the social media, which it's a lot of you know
Well,
misinformation being shared.
accountability is talked about a lot, um, but when it's time to be accountable, the room tends to thin out a bit.
Hmm.
And I would expect something like that would happen with social media as well. But I think that is still within, if the people decide they want something in our society, some market's going to provide it,
Hmm.
and eventually people will follow it. And I think that would make it better and stronger for all of us.
True. So my last question for you is, what is on the horizon for you for your office in the future?
Well, what I'm looking forward to, hopefully in another term, is to continue the good work that we've started in terms of rebuilding the stature of the office, the respect of the office throughout
Hmm.
government. Uh, it's also to make sure that we stay current and abreast of things that are going on in
Hmm.
government, and to help government to continue improving, which is, that's one of my charges: and
Hmm.
simplicity, accuracy, economy, efficiency, unbusinesslike practice. We want to make sure that that's what we're doing, because at the end of the day, our real charge as government is to make things better for people. And we're
Hmm.
supposed to be doing that at the lowest cost we can achieve to make that happen.
And I find like the second terms being more kind of efficient in many ways, especially in these positions like this, because there's a lot going on in the first term, and there are a lot of
Yes.
good experience that you have now. And then if you are not there on the year 5, It's just a
Well,
problem like but someone just restarts all over, and you have done a great job.
thank
I
you
know
very much.
from like different group of people that I talk to on either side of the aisle. So everyone has great respect for what you have done so far, and I know that you are going to be a great. You are going to have a great second term. Anyone primarying you? Like,
I managed to get through without a primary
oh, thank
challenger.
God. So primary is so unnecessary. So
They're
I'm
quite a
kidding.
that's
Oh,
it's
it's
off a
part of
little
the
bit off
system.
topic, but that's
Part of the system, right?
it's part of the system, and I was holding my breath right up until the deadline.
Well,
Um, but the people in the Democratic side have said this is we like apparently they like the job I'm doing, and I honestly and I do believe that there'll be a Republican on the other side of the ballot
sure.
for the general. But I think I'm ready to meet that challenge.
Well, thank you for joining us
Thank
today.
you for the
So this
invitation.
in-person interaction was much, a lot more enjoyable for me, and getting to know you, being able to be your voice for those who are looking for what you do and uh, what the state does. This is really important, and we appreciate for your time and explaining all these things that you have done so far and what you are planning to do in the future. And I'm sure we'll be having you back again. Usually with these positions, I try to get them every year,
Okay.
so that it's a kind of like we start with Governor Carney time, uh, going over the after he does the state budgets
Hmm.
confirmation, he will be here. So that tradition is kind of broken in the last 2 years, but we'll fix it.
Okay.
Uh, so we'll be we'll be having you hopefully again, and we are going to be back for another Bariatric Friday session at 3 p.m. And next week we have Jessica Needles, our legal person, is going to be with us. So until then, stay united. Bye bye.